I feel like I never have any idea what you're going to be talking about until I get here in this moment.
Usually it's, I don't know until a few days prior as well.
Yeah. But the funniest thing is because Mia tells us what she's doing and I still have no idea. So like yours, I'm like, oh wow, I haven't even asked her. And then Mia's like, remember I said I was going to do this? And I was like, hell if I know.
I only knew about this one kind of because I was like, I want to make sure that my episode next week complements this one.
Yeah, we
but
briefly
normally
conspired.
I go in kind of blind. And we're doing a duo. We're doing a joint episode at the end of the month, maybe.
Loading.
Yeah.
You guys aren't
Secrets.
even ready.
Yeah.
Okay, we're
I'm
just
ready.
so intellectual. Maybe we should buy some robes about it.
Oh my god,
On
we
that
should
note,
get robes.
On that note, I have a very serpentine topic today.
Serpentine.
Yes. Welcome back to the Gilded Eye podcast.
Woo!
Miss Mia and Buster Bell.
I always get the most work.
So my research in essence was centered on Johannes Vermeer, but this is not an artist deep dive per se. I'm going to be using his works to launch into some other conversations, particularly as it pertains to costumes, textiles, and material culture in the Dutch Republic, and how those things are interwoven with global trade. Much of my contentions in this episode are centered on the brilliant research of art historian Martha Hollander.
Love her
Okay,
already.
Hollander.
Love her.
Martha
Specifically,
Hollander.
her incredibly detailed journal essay titled Vermeer's Robe, Costume, Commerce, and Fantasy in the Early Modern Netherlands. If
Oh, is that why you said the robe thing?
Yeah, that's why I said the robe thing.
God, that went right over my head. Did you know?
Mia did, I think,
I knew a
vaguely
little
know.
bit. I knew
What
a little.
the heck? I just was like, haha, wizard
Well,
joke.
because I had
Wizard party last night. Wizards wear robes.
I will start by introducing the works in question that we're going to be discussing today. It's the Astronomer of 1668 by Johannes Vermeer and the Geographer of 1669 by Johannes Vermeer. If anybody is interested in looking at what we're yapping about,
Looking at what we're whopping about.
precisely, youtube.com/. These works are quintessentially Dutch Baroque, with the chiaroscuro and the content of the composition, too, marking this work as a genre scene, meaning it captures everyday life instead of being like a grandiose portrait or a biblical scene of the past. But, as with much of Vermeer's work, many questions remain. Who are these men? This is two different professions, supposedly two different individuals. It's the same
I thought
model.
that it was a beautiful woman.
Mm.
So
Women were not allowed to do that, unfortunately.
that blows.
Yeah.
But yeah, we may never know who this person is or if this is even a real individual at all. Some have, speculated that it's a self-portrait because everybody loves to hide a self-portrait.
No one knows what he looks like?
Nobody knows what he looks like. We'll get into that in a moment, too.
Vermeer?
Nobody knows what he looks like. There's no portraits of
Ooh.
him.
Wow,
Yeah.
mysterious.
All we can do is place a discerning eye on the scene before us. Many scholars have torn into the various books, maps, scientific instruments, and other emblems of intellect present within these compositions, but little attention has been afforded to these illustrious garments that they're wearing.
Oh.
It is these very robes which are crucial to the identities of these men and the cultural context they exist within. The hues of the astronomer's robe mirror the blue-green hues of the world itself, and the rounded form of the loose bell sleeves are evocative of the curved globe before him. It is apparent through their dress that these men are scholars, but it is equally as apparent that this is not Dutch attire. Yeah, these wardrobes are composed of rare artisan Japanese goods.
Oh.
Why are they here? And how do these objects function both in a visual context within this painting and in the context of Dutch identity and material culture? We will come back to these questions after I word vomit some context at you.
Woo!
Woo!
Sorry, that was a lot.
This is a very niche topic, so I apologize if this is not interesting
No,
to
it's
anybody
really
but me.
interesting.
I think that they are wearing the Japanese garments because they got really into Naruto.
As, it's a formative experience for everybody.
Yep.
They went to Dutch Comic-Con.
So, first of all, Johannes Vermeer was born in 1632 in Delft, Netherlands. It is rumored that he never traveled more than an hour away from his humble abode in Delft, which makes it even more interesting that he paints so many foreign rarities in his works. He did not possess the same grandiose ambitions as other Baroque-era artists. He was the son of a kaffa weaver, which could have attributed to Vermeer's artistic inclinations as he was exposed to a creative career at such a young age. It also could explain why he pays such close attention to textiles and costume. Kaffa is an illustrious fabric. It was woven from silk, cotton, and wool, or some combination of the three, like one or two. Vermeer's attention to the texture of garments, to differentiating between styles of dress and various fabrics, could be connected to his upbringing in this way. His training as a painter is thought to have commenced in his early teenage years. So he was like 12 and an apprentice, basically, 13.
Whatever.
That's how it worked, I think.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, what's your trade?
They just snag them.
Well, they also don't live till like past 50, so they gotta get him quick.
That's true.
Get in there, girlfriend.
That's so crazy.
He was a registered master in the Delft Guild of St. Luke at only 21 years old.
Wow.
As we mentioned, Vermeer was a Dutch Baroque painter. So we did talk about the Italian Baroque with Caravaggio, but up north, the Dutch had their own thing going on. Kind of, not really. It was basically the same thing, but less biblical. Both flavors of Baroque loved shadows, and they took a lot of inspiration from Caravaggio in terms of chiaroscuro, kind of trickled up. Vermeer did something unique for his era. He did not open a painter's workshop. He did not hire apprentices or students to help him churn out as much art as he could. This was very common for artists back then. They would often have their students block in colors, and they'd go back in with details after and be like, yeah, this work is mine completely.
That's so lame.
Isn't that silly? In fact, Vermeer took no pupils. He kept mostly to himself, and he made only an estimated 50 works in his whole life.
Wow.
Only 34 of which have survived into contemporary times. His small oeuvre could be contributed to his early death as well. He passed away very young, at the age of 43.
See?
Well, it's probably due to something.
See?
Do you have any guesses for
TV.
how he died?
Kicked by a horse.
His exact cause of death is completely unknown.
God
There's
damn it,
no
Myra.
records of it. But
Boring.
he may have died from being too broke.
Oh. Baroque.
True.
Baroque.
He was too baroque.
This sounds silly, but many sources cite financial distress as a leading factor in his declining health.
Like there was wealth disparity and disease and
All that, yeah.
no Western health care the way that we know it today. Like 43 is young, but I feel like 1600s like, wow, he almost made it.
He almost got there.
He almost got there, you know?
He had a good run. Didn't even write it down
That's
how
like
he
someone
died.
who's like 85.
I suspect that I could do at least 5 to 30 episodes on Vermeer.
And we will.
I have done a lot of research on him. He's very enigmatic, but I feel like his work launches a lot of conversations, which is fun. But nobody knows much about him at all. Nobody knows what he looks like. We have this detail from a larger painting on our slides. It's a detail from the Procurus of 1656, which is believed to have maybe been a self-portrait snuck into a genre work, but nobody really knows for certain if this is him or not. But it could be.
He looks
What
like
makes him
Weird
think-
Al.
Yeah.
So here we have the larger version of this painting. We have a young woman, a whore, who is sumptuously dressed in this bright yellow. And we have a man behind her wearing this flamboyant feathered hat. He's behind her holding her breast in one hand and offering her a copper for her sexual services in the other.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, at least she's being compensated.
Breast is allegory.
Breast is it, yup. The girl smirks at this blatant acquiescence to her financial demands, and an old woman stands next to them, almost eager for this transaction to take place.
Wow.
Okay.
This man is on the far left that is believed to be Vermeer. He's kind of an outlier in this trope of the Procurus. So they believe that, he was just snuck into the shadows.
Also, it kind of looks like a position and pose similar to one you'd see in a
Exactly.
self-portrait.
And the way that he's directly looking at the viewer, kind of breaking the third wall.
Yeah.
Everyone else is engaged in, like we're a voyeur in the scene, but
Yeah.
he's letting us know that we see
He's
him.
like, haha, can you
So
believe
weird.
this?
Yeah.
Now that I see the whole thing, like it's kind
Right.
of odd.
Yeah, isn't it strange? But the content of this composition, the Procurus, this is what we call a genre painting. This was a very popular topic for a genre painting. A genre painting is a painting of everyday life and scenarios encountered by your average Joe. People at work, rural life, brothel scenes were very popular. Genre painting in the context of the Dutch Republic, it grew to tell tales of morals that often fell into tropes and stereotypes. Art of the church, for instance, was historically used to enforce morality and gender roles, and the like. But during the Reformation, which was when this was, these expectations and stereotypes had to manifest in art in different ways, because the same gender roles and the same standards of morality in Christianity still existed, but you can't paint Catholic art anymore.
Mm-mm.
Boo. The
Lame.
church,
Boring.
yeah, the church had funded art for so long. Who was going to fund art now? The growing merchant class.
That's fair.
Okay, merchant.
Merchant. This is a merchant. This is a portrait of a merchant by Jan Wienix. First of all, why is everybody named Jan? Johannes Vermeer, short for Johannes, is Jan. So he's also Jan. The growing merchant class just dropped. Early modern capitalism was, as we know it, just dropped.
No.
This marks what we call the, quote, Dutch Golden Age. I am putting the Dutch Golden Age in quotation marks simply because it has been scrutinized in recent years for cultural appropriation and exploitation of the global South and the global East, allowing the Dutch to have the financial prosperity that led to science and art and philosophy flourishing at the expense of millions during this era.
Yeah. That makes sense. Checks out.
It does check out.
Seems on par with like everything else that happens in the world.
So the so-called Dutch Golden Age began in 1588, but really took off around 1602, 14 years later, when the Dutch East India Company was established. The Dutch East India Company allowed the Dutch to establish trading posts, strongholds, and even colonies all throughout the eastern continent. The Dutch West India Company, or the WIC, did the same thing, but to the west. This painting here by Albert Cuyp.
Okay.
Apologies. The title, the title of this is A Senior Merchant of the Dutch East India Company, Jacob Matthuysen, and his wife at Batavia, where Dutch East India Company ships prepare to sail home. This senior merchant right here is pointing to his right at all of the ships that he owns and commands. There is an enslaved person behind him, holding up an umbrella, and his wife stands with him. Both the enslaved individual and the wife are things that he owns, as are all the ships. Lots of ownership, lots of power dynamics here. The VOC were a menacing breed. They were the first ever joint stock company in the entire world, allowing any Dutch citizen to invest stock in a particular good, service, or branch. First stock market.
Wow.
Porcelain, art, rugs, textiles, clothing, spices, coffee, people. They bought everything. And they had permission to set up trading ports and even colonies. Permish. Yeah. The West India Company was more so involved in the transatlantic slave trade than the East India Company, but there was a lot of... Yeah, overall, the Dutch were a bit rapacious during this time.
Good word, Myra.
What does that mean?
Evil.
Yeah.
Conniving.
Yeah.
I think that's right. Maybe
Context
I should double check.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the peak of the VOC's success, the company was worth 78 million Dutch guilders, which is approximately $7.9 trillion today.
Trillion.
Oh my god.
Trillion.
Oh, whoa.
Oh my god.
Isn't that insane?
Jesus
they bought
Christ.
everything.
I don't even know what to say.
I don't even know what
That's
to say to
crazy,
that either. That
right?
is so crazy. I've never really heard that amount of money spoken, I don't think.
Starting in 1611, gift-giving began between Japanese and Dutch courts when the VOC reached the Far East. Dutch traders would annually visit the Tokugawa shogun in Edo, where they would be gifted rarities as a symbol of good spirits between the nations. This was monumental because Japan did not mess with Europe.
Yeah,
they did not trade with anybody.
They locked their doors.
The Dutch Republic was the only place that Japan would trade with.
They were like, Mads Mikkelsen is
Which,
going to be
yeah.
big one day, and we want to get in on that now.
Absolutely. But I think that made the traded goods from Japan even more coveted because they were the only ones that could get them. And they would sell them all throughout Europe, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, this is from Japan. We can't get shit from over there.
That's crazy, yeah.
And they've probably never seen anything like that before.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, ever.
This exchange of gifts, often consisting of military or ceremonial items given from one culture to another and vice versa, stood to symbolize fruitful trading relations. Eventually, they were gifted Commodities robes, which the Dutch would later call Japon's rocks, or simply Japon.
Japon.
After years of this bountiful trading, the Dutch ended up holding a strong sway in the East Asian silk trade. The earliest known written Dutch text describing Japan was written by Francois Caron, who says they received, quote, 200 Japan gowns and, quote, 200 pieces of red silk, end quote, as the final part of a ceremonial visit to the Imperial Japanese court. I think it's so funny that they're receiving these, like, intricate cultural garments, and they're like, oh, it's a Japan.
That is a Japan. Thank you.
Japan gown.
It's Japan.
Japan robe.
That's crazy.
I love my Japan robe.
They go and people are probably explaining all of the
Right,
technical
the nuances,
differences
yeah.
and everything, and they're like, "Thank you so much." Okay, anyway,
My Japan
I would like
robe.
one Japan, please.
And my grandmother handmade this. She made it on our country farm. She's using a traditional technique, and then the guy's like,
Like, okay, thank you for the Japan.
R.I.P. Caravaggio, you would have loved the katana. Yeah, he would have swung that thing.
Think about all of the blades he would have gotten.
Was he alive during this time? No, he was in the 1500s, right?
He was earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, so he set the Baroque premise before they kind of like crept up.
That C word with the lighting.
Chiaroscuro.
Yep, that one I will never say. Yes.
Kosode robes in Japan were kind of like they could be worn by anybody regardless of class, but it depended on the fabric. Silk kosode robes were often reserved for the imperial court or people who were very wealthy, very close with royalty.
I want to wear a robe. I do.
So that made it even more, lucrative and coveted for the Dutch. They were like, oh my God, these are so fancy. Only like, God. Only the imperial Japanese court gets to wear these, and here I am with my fat white ass, like in this fucking gown.
I'm going to get one of those robes. I'm going to go to Russia and steal an egg, and I'm going to be opulent.
Opulent.
I'm going to fill my room with saffron.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to be fucking opulent.
These kosode robes were unlike anything the Dutch had seen before. They were long, with billowing silk and shoulder padding. They were comfortable, but luxurious. The Japanese also specialized in intricate dyeing and painting techniques, which was so very different from the embroidery more widely known to Europeans. They'd never seen things crafted like this before. And I think something that made them so coveted was the great lengths that it took to obtain and transport them to the Dutch Republic. It was no small feat for one of these robes to emerge at an auction in the 1640s. Traders would embark on a month-long journey from Edo to Dashima prior to even bringing it on a boat back to the Netherlands. And silk is not the easiest fabric to transport. Silk is tear-resistant, it's true. It's also wrinkle-resistant, which is so smooth. But it's very susceptible to damage from water and heat, which can happen on a boat for several months. So to prevent damage, Japanese tailors would often sew absorbent cotton or silk wadding into the silk fabric to prevent damage on the voyage.
Interesting.
Even given this, many did not survive the trek.
Oh my God.
So making them even more coveted because there were so few of them and they were so expensive, so global. So eventually Japanese markets started catering to European audiences. In traditional Japanese style, these kosode robes were often belted with a Japanese obi belt. The Dutch tended to wear them open and loose, letting it all hang free.
Fast and loose.
Fast and loose. Another thing that the Japanese started doing was trying to replicate European family crests. This is painted on this is a fake European family crest to cater to the Dutch market.
Wow.
This is an unknown maker from the very early 1700s. It's a plain woven silk with stencil paste resist dyeing.
Wow.
And that is a facetious European family crest to cater to that market.
How much were they dropping on these things?
I actually don't know. I couldn't
Probably
find
a
any.
lot of
Probably
money.
a lot of money.
That's crazy.
Okamura Masanobu's Yukira and the Salt Maidens shows a more authentic Japanese portrayal of kosode robes. See, they were worn outside. In the Dutch Republic and in Europe, they were worn on the sofa. And it's also important to mention that Dutch fashion did influence Japan as well. It was sort of a give and take culturally. We see depictions of Dutch women stylized as Japanese women in Dutch attire, in woodblock prints.
Wow.
It also became fashionable. Remember we said that the Japanese tailor would sew cotton wadding cotton wadding into the fabric of the kosode robes to prevent damage. That actually became a style.
Oh, interesting.
Because it was sewn in for the European buyers. They were like, wait, actually, low key?
This eats.
These robes, in the eyes of the Dutch, grew to symbolize the complexity of early modern globalization and capitalism, making them incredibly desirable for high-ranking Dutch East India Company executives and other men who considered themselves to be, quote, worldly and could afford to be painted to look worldly. Portrait commissions began popping up for these very important fancy pants businessmen in Japanese silks. Take, for instance, Michel van Muscher's portrait of Johannes Hud, the burgomaster of Amsterdam of 1680. Isn't that so funny?
He's flipping them burgers.
That's what they call me
For
at McDonald's.
Me and my silk robe at McDonald's.
I'm just picturing like somebody, absolutely whipping out Wendy's double stacks. But for anybody who doesn't know, a burgomaster is basically a governor, like a high-ranking governor. So he was the governor of Amsterdam, which was like one of the biggest trade cities in the entire world at this time. So he felt like he was a pretty big deal, and he wanted to wear a robe about it. His figure dominates the majority of the foreground here. He is seated in an interior setting. The burgomaster asserts his authority through the sheer amalgamation of imported goods in this composition. Luxuries and symbols of intellect are strewn throughout. We see a globe, several globes, actually. On the shelf behind him, he's got 3 globes. I don't know if you guys can see.
I can't see shit.
Here, look at that.
It's like did I mention that I'm worldly?
These imported objects, like he has a Turkish rug used as a tablecloth, which was very common. They put Turkish rugs on the tables.
That made my stomach hurt.
I know, right?
Anyways, he has an open book implying active learning and engagement with academics, and the paperwork strewn upon the table boasts an important seal, denoting his authority, station, class, and education through this guise of worldliness, this guise of modernity, of being connected with trade. Perhaps most notably, he dons a robe of shiny purple silk lined with this chocolate brown detailing, and an intricate threaded floral pattern of gold, blue, and green add allure to this already illustrious garment.
Is his hand resting on something, or is it just up in the air in a weird way?
I think it's resting on the arm of his chair.
Okay.
I hope, unless it's
like,
just
what is he
floating.
I know, it
doing?
looks like he's floating there.
Yeah.
I think he's covering the with his little
his
paw.
robe.
With his robe. Due to an increase in demand and limited supply, the Dutch East India Company began seeking ways to replicate the Japan's rock to increase their profit margins and outsource production. They began commissioning the production of similar robes made of chintz or batik from India, also known as banyans. They were similar. Even though these robes are from an entirely different cultural context, they were still worn the same and regarded the same by the Dutch and by broader European buyers as this emblem of otherness, of worldliness, of fantasy, and of intellect.
Yeah, they just grouped that all together.
That's all one thing.
This is from Asia.
This is from Asia, thank you.
This is Japan almost.
This is Japan.
Yep, thank you.
Japan adjacent.
Orientalism was rampant. Scholars, academics, and philosophers began commissioning portraits in these billowing robes, often paired with other emblems for intellect like open books and imported objects. As opposed to...
Is he wearing a hat, or is he just so scary bald?
So scary. I think he is wearing a little hat.
I can't tell. I'm scared. He looks like the scary guy from, what's that movie? Men.
Oh, yeah.
For anybody wondering, we're looking at Portrait of a Man Reading a Book from 1668 by Pieter. I don't know how to say the Peter with an I. It's the Peter with an I. Pieter Cornelius van Slingeland.
Slingeland?
I don't know what the Dutch have going on with those names. Anyways, that's that guy. As opposed to the cassette style in Japan, which was often belted with an obi, or the occasional buttons of the Indian banyan, the Dutch and other Western cultures wore these garments loose and open. And again here, with the portrait of Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, a natural philosopher and zoologist from the Dutch Republic, we see books, imported documents, foreign rarities, a globe, and a robe. A very precise visual language is being born here, and it travels throughout Europe and into the psyche of Western culture as a whole, reaching the Americas. In the words of founding father Benjamin Rush...
I was waiting for that. I don't know why. I was waiting for the words founding father to come out of your mouth.
Benjamin Rush?
I don't even know which one that was. I was like, who is that?
Mount Rushmore.
I'm
gagged.
He said this about imported silk robes. Quote, loose dresses contribute to the easy and vigorous exercise of the facilities of the mind.
What?
This remark is so obvious and so generally known that we often find studious men are always painted in gowns when they are seated in their libraries.
They're like, it's not gay.
It's not a dress,
gay to wear
guys.
a dress.
Stop.
It means that you're smart.
I'm
okay?
smart.
Guys, we're
And
smart.
I'm sick of hearing about
My
it.
boyfriend's wearing one too, but I'm just smart.
And we're not even that close. We just sleep together every night.
I just mean, like
My friend who's a boy.
my friend who's.
Here we have a portrait of Sir Isaac Newton.
Oh.
Was everyone fugly? What happened to like the Italians painting everyone gorgeous? I
If
missed that.
somebody painted me like that, I would...
I'd hope more apples fell on my head. It's like I get a concussion, never see again. Good lord.
He's wearing none other than an imported silk robe. This robe is believed to be imported from India, but as I said earlier, robes of this style were all swept under the same generalizing umbrella of Orientalism, completely removing these garments from their original cultural context and were treated as emblematic of the same intellectual prowess, power, divinity, and by extension, globalism and capitalism.
It's crazy because I've seen so many paintings of white people in robes and just thought, oh yeah, robe.
He's in a robe.
He's in like scholarly robe. I never, ever,
I know,
ever
right?
knew it was
I was
tied
so
to any of
gagged
this.
when I first read.
This is crazy.
Martha, we love you.
Because it ties back to money and who
Yeah.
has the
Yes,
money and
yes.
who can afford to be smart and educated.
Yes!
I thought it was like trying to be like, oh no, like I'm smart, but I'm cash. You know,
I'm
I
so
didn't
keeping
realize
it so
it had
cash.
so much like history
Oh
behind
my God.
it.
Everything, every fashion has so much. I love it so much.
I just don't ever think about.
I don't
these
think
things.
about
This
it
is
often either.
changing my history in my mind. That's crazy.
There are actually several portraits of Isaac Newton donning this style of dress. And for those of you who need a little refresh, because me personally had not talked extensively about old Newt since I took AP Bio in high school,
Not.
this man was not just a scientist or a scholar, but he was the scientist. The mathematician, alchemist, religious theorist, astronomer, etc.
Mm-hmm.
He did it all. So it would make sense that genre paintings of men in learning, of scholars, would feature robes to denote their fantastical worldliness, their modernity, and their intellect. As previously discussed, genre scenes rely on tropes to tell a message or a story. So if we go back to the first Vermeer genre scene that we looked at, the procuress in this painting is marked by her elderly appearance and her dark attire. The whore wears bright colors, and the light shines very brightly onto her. And the drunken merchant, seeking a romp in the sack, is labeled by his flamboyant feathered cap. Everything has a certain costume in genre scenes. And in Vermeer's The Astronomer and the Geographer, these imported Japanese robes act as a form of costume, setting the scene for the viewer that these are men of intellect, men of global connections, men of fantasy, of modernity. Out of his 36 known surviving paintings, these two are the only works by Vermeer depicting men alone in their practice.
Interesting.
Men also, for him, only emerge in a broader genre scene. He didn't do portraits. He did a lot of paintings of women. That's another
Was he
conversation.
a feminist?
I'm going to say so.
Let's
That's
do
not
it.
known, but we
do
can
it.
pretend.
We love you, Vermeer.
I do love Vermeer,
Right now,
honestly.
Vermeer's great. He didn't really want to go anywhere. I like that
He was
about
chilling,
him.
yeah.
He wasn't globaled. What?
He wasn't
global.
globaled. This pair of paintings both depict the same man stylized as an academic of different specialties, because genre scenes don't depict reality, they depict a story. They both appear restless, as if they are inflicted with the burden of their own intellect, yet still seek solace within it. The astronomer twirls his globe with utter fascination, and the geographer gazes longingly out the sunlit window before him. The geographer holds a compass and stands before a table of maps, with a framed map in the far right background, framed and mounted on the wall, and a globe placed atop the dresser behind him, whereas the astronomer is completely captivated by the globe before him. Both pieces use a broad form of Japanese-inspired costume to portray men of learning, curating a fantasy of intellect, wealth, and consumerism. Vermeer could not afford one of these robes. And in the inventory of his house done after his passing, he did not own one of these robes.
He was Baroque.
So he either rented this garment
Sorry.
or made it up in his head.
Wow.
Yeah. He did not have access to that kind of wealth.
Wow.
Genre works such as these unveil the power of the VOC, of the Dutch East India Company, as a transnational corporation in influencing trends, influencing purchasing patterns, fashion, art, culture, and more. In fact, some scholars have suggested that these two paintings by Vermeer could have been commissioned by the VOC as a means of naturalizing these foreign objects, of presenting and constructing the narrative of Japan's rocks and Indian banyans throughout the Dutch Republic and into Europe. This sort of meshing, this intermingling of exotic consumption and artistic invention was fueled by the influence of global trade in the early modern Netherlands. Genre paintings grew to be considered quintessentially Dutch, an integral part of the country's visual language, culture, and identity. And yet, this facade of identity was built on imported goods, things that did not originate in the nation, not their own culture, colonialism, materialism, and capitalism. How has this trickled into contemporary perceptions of these garments?
It'll trickle down.
It'll trickle. Specifically, Eastern Asian garments like robes. Let's think about the perceptions of the Japan's rock in the Dutch Republic. Wealth, intellect, power, fantasy. A fantastical scholar that I grew up watching always wore silk robes.
Bill Nye the Science Guy?
Professor Albus Dumbledore.
Oh my god!
Of course.
Always. In fact, I think like the uniform of Hogwarts, all of the professors, all of the scholars there, they were always in those big ass robes.
Yeah.
And the normal wizards didn't wear robes. It was only like the academic wizards.
They wore robes.
They wore like school.
But not robes.
They wore school robes.
Yeah.
Like dress robes. They wore silk robes.
Like almost a gown.
Almost a gown. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, I believe that Dumbledore even has a matching cap to a lot of his silk robes, which is consistent with the style accompanying Indian banyans.
Oh.
It's crazy.
Bonkers. We could apply this line of thought to our own capitalistic society as well. Like, how do big businesses influence what we wear, what we eat, how we dress, what we purchase? This is still a very real phenomenon today, as it was in early modern capitalism.
That makes me want to pull out my hair.
I know.
I mean, I've always been a Maxxinista, so
Same.
I feel like every time I go to TJ Maxx, I'm waiting for TJ Maxx to tell me what I need. And I'm like, I need this gua sha, I need this rod to wrap my hair in.
For real.
Well, also then it's okay, so back then I feel like all these academics, everybody was trying to be them. They were the Dutch 1700 influencer people.
Exactly.
And when new paintings of them dropped, everyone was like,
oh my god, they have the robes.
Yes.
It's like the equivalent of like a brand paying you to be like, you know what, you really need this microfiber towel to make you not go bald.
Hey.
Maybe I
I'd
do.
try it.
I would try. I actually do own several microfiber towels.
Speaking of, sponsor us.
Sponsor us, let us
Hi.
know.
What should we filter into your ear holes? Guys, we're really trying to be part of the problem.
We're really trying to be,
Please.
yeah.
Yeah.
So visual and material
Yeah,
culture
anyways.
today is often consumed digitally, and that's the way that it manifests. But in the 17th century, it was through public art commissions that people, navigated what they sought.
Still visually.
Yeah.
And that,
You know?
that
Absolutely, still visually.
it makes sense too why these trends lasted for so much longer, it seems, back then. Like
right.
now I
yeah,
feel
it's
like,
such a fast turnover rate. And
yeah, because now it's like we see a new thing on Instagram every day. Like micro
Yeah,
trends happen
exactly.
all the time, and then it's the fast fashion problem. Whereas back then, like you could only make so many paintings so quickly.
then exactly.
People are only, that's why this feels a lot more like culture versus what we have right now.
Exactly.
Even if it's like a stolen culture.
No,
type of situation.
absolutely, yeah. And like if we look at the dates on a lot of these paintings, there's a big range. A long time that this was prominent, and it still trickles into our culture today.
Right. Well, people now, like, especially watching anime and stuff, like, the characters in anime still wear robes, sometimes traditional robes, and then people in America are like, and then they go buy it off Shein.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they wear them around. It's kind of crazy. Think about, like, cardigans. Like, when you think of, like, a professor at school, like, they're wearing, like, a cardigan. Is that not a smaller robe?
Is that not just a robe light?
Robe light.
Diet robe.
Yeah.
Robe.
Nice wool cardigan.
And we also should just do point blank period Vermeer
full Vermeer deep dive. Yeah, I would love to do that.
That'd be fun.
I thought about combining that with today, but I feel like the subject matter of what I actually talked about was kind of far removed from his life.
I think this was great.
I think it was really
thank
good.
you.
Did you pick him to start off with because you like him a lot?
Yes, predominantly.
I think that made it more interesting because you're like, look at this thing I love. Let's talk about
like why he put that in there.
And then let's circle back around to like, this man actually knew nothing about any of this.
He really, he was like, I love cloths. I've never traveled.
You know what's funny,
I'm going to paint.
Oh, sorry.
No, what were you going to say?
In his painting of the robes, it doesn't look like silk at all. Like the way it kind of bunches on the arms, like it looks
like a curtain or something.
Yeah, it looks blocky.
It does, yeah. I think it could be partly the wadding sewn into it. Because, like, look at that. That's a padded-ass shoulder. You know what I mean?
I do
also love the
that.
bob, the shoulder-length bob on this individual.
Really good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And also, again, friggin' Turkish rug on the table. Twice. I did a very long paper on his painting of a girl asleep.
Isn't that your favorite painting? What's your favorite? You told me one time you
that
were
might
like,
be my favorite, one of my favorites at least.
Pull it up. I want to see it just like for my own.
I saw it in person and I was gagged.
Her widow's peak is crazy.
That's actually, I thought it was a violent widow's peak. It's a type of head garment to denote station.
Oh,
She's
wow.
a maid.
Oh, wow.
I know so much about this painting.
It's beautiful.
I think Vermeer paints genre scenes in a very interesting way in that sometimes the narrative, because there's a lot of narratives in genre art, his narratives are harder to discern. They're the lines are a little bit more blurred.
It's crazy that no one knows what he looks like.
That is crazy, right? Most artists are like, look at me. It is also rumored that he took no real pupils, but he could have took an unofficial pupil in his daughter, which was like not really allowed or spoken of. So he
girl dad,
feminist, yeah.
Aw,
girl dad Vermeer.
Wait, why did that? Okay, yeah. But Vermeer, he keeps things enigmatic in a way that's true to his personality, the way that he kind of kept to himself, and also prompts further conversations even today. I think that's why he's so prominent.
I like his name.
Perhaps the most prominent Dutch Baroque painter. Rembrandt,
Really?
like, okay, sure.
He was?
Him and Rembrandt are probably, I think, the two.
Rembrandt?
Oh, I've heard his
Rembrandt.
name.
Rembrandt
Is hilarious.
I can never say that man's name.
Rembrandt.
Rembrandt
is awesome though, and I do like that.
Rembrandt.
I think we should only refer to him as that.
Yeah.
Rembrandt.
Sorry.
I can't say anybody's name, but
No, me neither.
they were both. See, Vermeer, no self-portraits. Rembrandt,
1 million.
1 million self. He invented the selfie. He
Okay,
had so fucking many.
I know what that man looks like. I can
You
see
do,
that in my mind.
completely, yeah.
100%.
Vermeer, no one knows.
I still
Anyways.
like Klimt's self-insert. He did like one with his brother, and he was
Loved
like, "Yo,
it.
look at me!
He's
like
like,
I'm
I'm in
looking
there."
at Romeo and Juliet," and that's it. It's
I was
funny.
just asked who Klimt was.
Wow, you're like a fake fan. I think.
am.
Wow, that was.
Then I was like, well, because all the names, they kind of
yeah, that's a lot of names.
They all
It's
just
true.
kind of. But I do remember that
Merging.
one. I liked that episode a lot.
That was a good one.
We can cut you in if you have things to say about Klimt. I'll go in and I'll say
Be like, I don't know who that is.
the only thing you say in the whole episode.
We started like I do like a little intro. It's like, hey guys, it's Belle. Thanks for listening to the old episodes.
Myra, thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Oh my
Thank
god,
you,
thank you
Myra.
so
That was
much.
I learned a lot. I learned today.
My
We've
brain
learned.
history has changed. I can picture myself as a youngin' looking at history books. I used to go to the Worcester Art Museum all the time and look
Oh
at
yeah,
art.
they've got a great
I'm like,
collection.
man in a robe. Surely.
Sure, absolutely. Where did he get that robe? Now we know.
I don't care.
Now we know.
Now I care. As a child, I'm like, robe.
Robe.
It is
Cool. That's what
crazy.
intellectual men wear. That's what wizards
Yep.
wear. That's why.
Yep.
Like I'm sure that like it's just the
Gandalf? Sorry.
adopting
Exactly.
the adopting of culture and then the tweaking of it. Like I'm sure
Right.
that Japan took Dutch fashion. Like that that
yeah.
image that you showed where it was in that context and how differently they must have think about all the layers of clothing, like the corsets and
Yeah,
the
all that.
stuff,
They're probably like,
yeah.
why would they do that? But
they're like, you know what?
That eats. You know, I actually like learned quite a bit about Japanese, like how they changed from like imperialism like throughout the ages once Europeans started going there, and it was like quick. They said this is weird, and they said, oh, hold on, we could profit off of this like really fast. And it's like really interesting because they had thousands and thousands and thousands of years of being like untouched. I mean, they're on an island.
They
you know?
were not. They
And
did
once-
not fuck with visitors.
No, once people got there, they said,
They said this is an exclusive
Like, here we go.
island.
I don't know as much anymore, but this was cool to like hear
how
it began because it's been
that
a
was
while.
right.
Yeah, that's so cool.
wild.
Thank you, Myra. This was
Oh my God,
so
thank
cool.
you.
You're beautiful.
You're beautiful.
Thanks
You're
for
beautiful.
listening, everybody.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks
I
for
hope
coming.
that made sense.
Yeah, totally.
I think it did.
Yeah.
I followed so wonderfully.
Same.
The only episode I was like, what is going on is the Russia CIA one, and that's because I didn't know anything about Russia. But now I do, because after that I was like, I need to learn everything about Russia.
Russia
Yeah.
was hard. It's like, that's because there's so much that happened in that.
It's the size of the world.
Literally.
It's so big. Like we could do an episode a month about Russia for 5 years and still not know anything about Russia.
And also, that's not a comment on your storytelling
No.
abilities. That was a comment on my lack of knowledge and understanding about
That was
Exactly.
a wild
context.
episode.
I
Too.
liked
That was
it, though.
awesome.
That was
We've
not-
gotten some good reviews on that one.
Really?
Yeah, people like it a
It's
lot.
just the CIA being like,
You guys are so smart.
so smart.
We're definitely not after you.
CIA.
Hey, CIA. We love
Hi,
you.
CIA.
Hi, CIA.
Hey, like and comment and subscribe.
Yes.
Thank you.
CIA stands
We're
for
good
CIA
citizens.
is awesome. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you. Love you. Thank you for listening. Come back next week. Bye. Today, we're going to be talking about some. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Y'all made me lose my.
Perfect start. The bloopers reel in this one's going crazy.
Financial distress as a leading in all of the objects traded within.
Bleh.
Starting in 1611,
Oh.
Okay. Eventually, they were gifted custode, and the burgomaster here it's spelled Burgo master.
Burgomaster.
Burgomaster.
Burgo.
They both appear restless, as if they are They both appear restless.
I like the bloopers at the end of the videos.
That
It's
is
been really
fun.
funny.
Yeah.
I sound crazy.